I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights, and I want to thank you for joining us. Today, I've got a young author that I met at a recent conference, and I kind of liked his stuff. Not only did I check him out online, which we're going to give you information to do also, but he'll be our first science fiction author, though he does write as Andrew Sweet, but that's because there's already a fairly notable author, Charles Sweet, and you can't have too many of the same thing, right?
Yeah, it gets hard to find me.
It does. It's Andrew. Andrew Sweet is the writing, but we're talking to Chuck. Thanks for joining us today, Chuck.
Hey, sure. It's a pleasure to be here, Strider. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, as I said, you write science fiction, but what kind of, there's a lot of science fiction. What's your specialty?
Sure. So I generally try to stick with hard science fiction. And for those who aren't aware, that's just, I take today's technology and I extrapolate it into the future. For me, it's far science fiction. It's about 150 to 200 years from now, and what could possibly happen with the technology that we have today if it's allowed to evolve.
Like we could be gone by that. I hope not.
Well, my money's on will still be around.
Yeah. I also noted you have a lot of, say, social issues that you put into your work and extrapolate from, correct?
Yeah, it's true. What I find is that I've always been a study of history for a very long time, and I find that there are certain patterns that repeat. And so I pull from a lot of my futuristic science fiction is pulled from the social demographics and the social the way society behaves is pulled from what's actually happened in our history.
Of course, we got where we are because we evolved through social systems. We were one-on-ones in the way back. We went through, tribal chiefs. We went through kings. We went through all these things as part of growth to where we are now. And we hope we haven't slid backwards too far. And we keep taking steps forward. So you're taking those and you're producing your work out of it. Now, I know you've got like 2 different series and a couple of standalones. What exactly do you have?
Yeah. So my first series, which has been pretty well received, is called Reality Gradient, and that's the universe that I've created in the 200 years from now that I tell people about. A lot of my books, even the ones that aren't in that series, that's a 3-book series. All kind of tie into that universe in interesting and neat little ways. And I've got one other series that I'm about 2 books into. I'm going to stick to the science fiction. It's Virtual Wars, which also kind of plugs into the same universe. So quite a bit going on. Keeps me busy, that's for sure.
And you've got a couple standalones?
Absolutely. I've got one that I consider to be a not really science fiction, but it takes place in the same universe. It's kind of a dark, almost horror-esque type of thing. It's about serial killers, and I've got another one that's about kind of like The Expanse, where it's involving examining trade between Earth and Mars and the various ways that can go horribly wrong.
Well, we hope not there also. Well, now you have created a world building situation and you put multiple books into one world, which is really cool, especially even the standalones where they're not a series. I think that's awesome. In my books, The Adventures of Ronan Stone, I world built the Old West and the Gaslight era in basically a US situation, early, of course. But I still had to do that world building. How do you go about your world building? Now, yours, is it here theoretically or anywhere in the universe?
Yeah, I don't go. I tend to stick with the Earth and what's going to happen on the Earth. So in that respect, I get a lot of it for free because a lot of the places that are here are still going to be around. I like to be sneaky. I do sneaky world building where I kind of take stuff and like put it in different chapters all throughout the novel. So you kind of builds the world as you go. I prefer to do that because it keeps my interest, because I try to pick up things like, I don't know, Dune and some other very, very well received and very well acclaimed for good reason science fiction, but the world building is all up front. And so it's hard to like keep all that stuff in my head, where I like to tack things on. So I provide that experience for my readers.
Do you just keep that all yourself in your own mind? Do you have this data bank you store? Are you using Dan Garland, her method of doing it for you? And that's a service person that I know that takes, say, your work and then does a book Bible of it so that you remember what happened and who's where and what they look like, and do they chew gum or what they spit those kind of things that you have to remember if you're doing more than one
Ah,
book.
yeah. So I find that the characters for me and the personalities of the characters and how they change kind of sticks for me. So that stuff sticks in my head. I'm horrible with dates, so I use Eon Timeline on my Mac to kind of, and I have every chapter and the times when it happens, and I can get down to like the hours and minutes. And so I had to do that with my first novel because I wrote it like a pantser. I wrote it from beginning to end with nonstop, and so I had to go back and I found out everything was out of order. So I got a timeline utility to help me line up everything.
Talk about Panther. I understand that, where you just write and then you have to go back and fix it all because
Mhm.
it changes, or you change the story, or something else comes about and you got to go try to patch it. It's fun to write that way,
It
I
is.
think, but it's also fraught with hazards. How's that for a
Yes.
poetic term way of putting it? Because you do have to be aware and do tons of check back on, okay, where did I stick this and how did that happen? And it's the other way is probably easier. I don't know about better, but it's certainly
Yeah.
got to be at points, got to be easier.
Yeah. Yeah, I do both now. I do like a little bit of plotting for a lot of my stuff now, just because it helps me churn out novels a little bit faster. And
Yes.
those guardrails are kind of useful, but they can also be constraining. So sometimes I just have to blow away like 6 chapters and say, okay, no, I'm just gonna write these. So I'm not gonna pay attention to
Yeah.
my plan.
And for those out there, don't just throw them away, stick them aside into a safe place, because you may want to play with them some other time or use them in another place or give them out as freebies to your followers, those kind of things.
Hmm.
For those writers out there that, or want to be writers, those two that are following us, which is really fun. Um, so what tools do you use? I mean, this is a lot of, yeah, you just get on your keyboard and write, but do you have other tools that you use in particular?
Yes, and indispensable. Scrivener is what I use now. I used to use just Microsoft Word, but Scrivener lets me have the hierarchical view so I can get to each chapter and I don't have to like scroll down 20 pages to
Here,
find out where I
here.
was.
Yeah.
Um,
Another thing they
yeah.
do have on there is text to word. Like, you can listen to your text and you can just go back to the chapter and run down through it and it'll read it to you. Yeah, it's not like a narrator's voice, but you can hear those lines. It sounds different when it's read than it does when you read it. It just does. And you can catch some errors or some word changes you want to put in there. Oh gosh, that sounded just like this one here. And sometimes when you're reading, you don't catch those. So I do use it. I use that portion of it also. So yeah, Scrivener is a great tool.
Yeah. Do you use Vellum as well? Vellum's a useful tool, so I find.
And what do you find the high points of Vellum?
I like that the way it pulls everything in, and then one of the things that I like about it that I used to hate about it was that it kind of yanks everything out of my Word. I export from Scrivener to a Word document into Vellum. It yanks everything out, and now I've got a separate place to do things. But now I love that because I can go through and I can move the chapters around and do all this
Well,
formatting
that's
stuff
handy. Yeah,
that I
yeah.
couldn't do that I can't really do in Scrivener without. I mean, Scrivener's a great tool, but if you want to get fancy with the formatting, you have to really learn the tool.
You do. Yeah, it has got tons of things available on Scrivener, but it takes a little work to get it figured
Mhm.
out and how to do it.
Yep.
There's so much there. I now tend to go to Atticus, and that works particularly well with formatting. It goes through and it'll format the whole thing in all kinds of options that you want, and then will automatically drop it in either, say, an EPUB file or a Word file, Word docx, or all these options, which I'll tell you is a problem with me because I write on a MacBook and that does not transfer easily to other things. It doesn't open up the same. A lot of people can't open it at all. So when you send that to an agent, they go, I can't open your document. Don't even send me one. That gets, and I've done that. So then you have to take it back and you have to convert it over to a docx file. And that gets problematic. Well, for me, it is and does, although it's not a difficult process. It's just another step to do.
Tedious, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so I've gone to Atticus recently, which I really love, and they're also doing the read back thing, which they're converting their program to do. I actually talked to them personally, and they said, "Yep, we're on to that. We're going to be doing that. We don't have it at this moment, they do. And like pages, it will read back, but it'll start from letter one of your, including your heading, and read back through everything. And tell you what, in a 90,000 word book, you never get to where you need to go, but you have to, because you pause it and it'll start over again from so that is really a problem. So yeah, Scrivener does not have that problem. And I like to hear people's options on what they use and why and what they found on it, because just what I use doesn't mean anybody else has that same problem, or they have things available.
I tried out Atticus when it was first built. That's an online based tool, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I tried it when it was first coming around, and it wasn't there yet. I need to circle back and check it out, because I think it held a lot of promise.
It really does. And like I said, particularly the formatting, and you can choose a format style, the lettering, the wording, the spacing, it'll automatically come up on the next book you write. If you like that style, set it for a series. You want this, I want this spacey looking cool things, mechanical. It'll let you drop backdrops in on your chapter headings and all kinds of things. Advance each chapter heading, like something moving each time. It's got tremendous amount of options, and it's not terribly difficult to use, or I would be shot. I'm a little technically challenged myself, but I'm still plowing my way through. And that's what I'm using now for the most part, although I do kind of switch back and forth a lot of times. He says specifically to Scrivener right now, because I can hear it back through, which is really neat. Eventually I won't have to do that, but now I'm still juggling. So what is your newest, what came out, and are you looking at something to come out shortly?
Yes. So actually in October, I will be releasing my first
October. This is the second.
Sorry, 8 days. So probably maybe even before this podcast goes live, I will be releasing my novel Drift, which is my first horror novel. I did pre-release it to some beta readers, and one of them has fallen in love with it and has decided that they absolutely adore it. It's not like
that's a good
Scream
start.
Horror. Yeah, it's not a bad start. It's not Scream Horror. It's more like, it doesn't take itself too seriously, because I love like Resident Evil and stuff like that, where it's a lot of fun.
All right, and expanding in your genre base. That's cool.
Next summer, I've got my next 2 books in my Virtual War series coming out. That's in Inertia and Momentum and Hidden Places. So anybody that's
Keep an eye out
interested
for
for those.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
then
not only just here, we're sponsored by German Publishing, and all of your books will end up there. I don't know that I've actually talked to you about that yet, but yes, ta-da, as a guest author, in this case on Author in the Headlights, all of your works will show up there, and with links to where to get them from.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
just as just another place to show your face and to show your works, and that's just a service they put on. The more we can get you and your name out to the public, and then the books that you have, that sounds cool, I'll try one of those, or I'll keep an eye out for one of those. And I have been on your website and I have looked at that and go, hey, that's pretty well done. Okay, so your world building, social issues, character types. Do you have real bad guys, real good guys? How did that work?
Oh yeah. No, that's a good question. I don't think my bad guys are all that bad and my good guys are all that good. I like to work in the murky gray areas because I find that people generally aren't all good or all bad.
Oh, so I'm a really good bad guy. Is that?
Yeah. Well, people generally just make good or bad decisions. And some of my characters make really consistently bad decisions. So let's just
there you go. And some people have those particular issues too. Yep. So you're not following any particular like plan right here. This guy's going to do this and this and this and this.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of I start off with a protagonist that I really like, because I can't tolerate a protagonist that I have to that's too evil. I need to have some redeeming quality, or I can't write it. And then I generally run them through a series of events that of their own making, because people make decisions that guide their path through life. And I create the society, I create the world, and I kind of put the character in it, and then document what happens. It really works out that way sometimes.
the world building I wanted to get to, science fiction, that's a cool thing. There's so much science fiction out there, and to find some that can connect with you and go, I like it. I like his thought method and style. But we can bring you some of those readers and some people that are going to see you someday at a conference because they decided to write and say, hey, I saw you.
Yeah. Well, I'm always happy to talk, and I talk a little too much sometimes, so feel free to stop me.
Not here. See, when you're talking, I'm not, and they like that. Okay. I'm Strider, your host. This is Chuck Sweet, writing as Andrew Sweet. Look him up that way. Don't forget. And this is Author in the Headlights, sponsored by Durham Publishing. Thank you for joining us, and catch us again next time. Thanks. Sponsored by DurhamPublishing.com.